let me warmly welcome Robert Gold here on the panel. He's an economist for the IFW in Kiel, and he's talking about the impacts of Bidenomics on voting behavior, and we are very curious to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Nicely fits to the panel discussion before. It would be great if I could have the slides on the monitor, like kind of now or so. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So, this doesn't work, but this does. So this is the economy. This is the US economy. What you see here is economic growth by state from the first to the second quarter this year, and you see that the economy is growing, and it's growing more or less each and everywhere except in Alaska. And this after a longer period of inflation, as we hear it, but inflation is down now, so they really managed to have a soft landing in the US. The labor market is doing okay. So economic outlook is specifically as compared to European Union pretty good. So from an outside perspective, you would think that this is a good time to be an incumbent and go into the election, because it looks as if things were going pretty well. Nevertheless, we know what happened. It's not the incumbent who won, it's the opponent. And I mean, you might suspect that perhaps other issues than the economy were more important, but there aren't, as we all know. So this is data from exit polls, and it's a poll from CNN. And what you see is that 32% of all voters say that the most important issue for their voting decision was the economy. That's the single most important item. And it is specifically important for the Trump voters. So 80% of Trump supporters said that their voting decision was based on the economy. So what is that? Are people just stupid? And I want to reiterate here something that Isabella Weber said. We have a tendency as economists to suspect that people just do not understand economics, but sometimes I think economists do not really understand people, and it's important to better get what they do. So 80% of Trump supporters say that their voting decision was based on the economy. And if you look at the impact of people's assessment of the economy on their voting decisions, you see that nearly everybody who thought that the economy was doing good supported the incumbent, as suspected. So almost all people who said that the economy was doing excellent or were doing good voted for the Democrats. Those people who said the economy was doing not so good, there you have a split vote more or less. There are, Democrats and Republicans are pretty close. But all those people who said the economy was doing poor, they, to a large majority, supported Trump. And the problem is that the majority of people thought the economy was not doing good, and as a consequence voted for the opponent. Pretty much what you would expect. So if you are dissatisfied with the way the economy is doing, you vote for change. The question is, why do those people think the economy is doing so badly if the macro data tell you that it might be doing good? Well, we already heard a couple of arguments, I think, before. So basically, I think there's a lot of discussion around this now, this puzzle. Why is it that people do not did not give Biden administration the benefit for this economic development? And I think you can summarize the arguments broadly in three categories. And the first is that voters rationally did vote for Donald Trump, because from their perspective, they felt the economic hardship as just explained before. What looks good in the macro figures does not necessarily imply that each and everybody is happy with the way the economy is doing. And there are certainly subpopulations in the US, specifically lower income groups, who have to struggle a lot with the price increases caused by the inflation. And only because inflation is down does not mean that the prices go down. They stick at their level, and if you're in the lower income percentiles, that may have a strong impact on your cost of living. So there are definitely people who, for good reason, say we are economically worse off than some time before, and we want to have change. Then, and I think these reasons are not mutually exclusive, there are irrational motives for having this assessment of the economic developments, which has to do a lot with psychological factors. Yeah, there's research on that you have some hindsight bias, and this has been also fueled by the Trump campaign and in general by populist campaign. If you look at the spots they run on TV, it's very much, do you feel better off than you were 4 years ago? It's not go through the books and check whether you're better off. It's how do you feel? Do you feel better off? And there are psychological factors that contribute to forgetting about bad things and to overstating the good things. But people also may make a rational voting decision, but not based on these objective figures, but on their subjective norms and values. And this might also have played a role here in the US, if you think of these flagship policies of the Biden administration. We heard about it, Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It was very much about supporting lagging regions by investing into green transition. And it might just be that some people say, okay, we want investment, but we do not want this investment. We want growth, but we do not want green growth. It's also an issue we saw during the Brexit debate, that people were against the European Union, not because they did not understand that they benefit from investments. It's just they do not want these foreigners to invest in my country, or I do not want this elite from Washington invest into their green growth dreams. I do not want the government at all to invest. This is communist policies. And I think all these factors were in play, and at least the discussion goes around all these factors, and I think it's particularly important to understand about their relative importance. And this is where our project kicks in, at least as far as I understand it. The Forum New Economy was so kind to commission a study to empirically assess the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act on the last US election. So we gathered data on the last US election. This is, so to say, my magic wall here. So we have county level election results. And what you see in red is the share for the Republican Party. We don't have yet data on all the states, but basically, as you see, there are areas here in red where Donald Trump really got 90 or more % of the votes. And this is the difference between the votes for the Republicans over the Democrats. So this is the Republican lead over, no, is this right? No, what is this? This is GOP vote share. No, this is the vote share. What did I have? No, this is the gains. Sorry, this is the gains of the Republican Party, and you see that yeah, as said, they were successful each and everywhere, more or less. Our research question now is, in how far, now I have it, what it is. So this is losses of the Democrats as compared to the last election. So the deeper red a county is, the higher the decrease in vote share by the Democratic Party. And you see that there's apart from very few counties in the center, where support for the Democrats is low, the Democrats lost all over the place, and they specifically lost in their old strongholds in the old urban areas. And our question here, and we have this is a very specific question, is not so much about the overall impact of this Bidenomics program on the US election in general. It's very much about seeing whether on the regional level investments taken by the flagship US policies, flagship Bidenomics policies, that's the Inflation Reduction Act, that's the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, that's the CHIPS Act, whether investments on the ground in the economic developments of counties did have an impact on this specific outcome, which, if you look at the figures, does not imply that we investigate whether it somehow helped the Democrats to win counties. This is not what's in the data. The question really is whether they lost less in the regions that received funding by these Bidenomics policies, you could say. And this map shows you the per capita investment, the aggregate per capita investment that happened until now from, as said, the IRA and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the CHIPS Act. It's pretty nicely scattered across counties. Nevertheless, as Harold James said, there's a built-in provision that these investments primarily go into Republican-leaning areas, which is mainly due to the fact that I mean, most of these measures are based on investment subsidies, and the subsidies increase if investment is made in lagging regions. Lagging regions tend to be Republican counties, and this is why the investment is very much centered in these Republican areas. We know from Europe that in the European Union, regional policies that invest into the development specifically of lagging regions did help to reduce populist support. And the question here in the very end is whether you could find a similar effect in the US. Not in a sense, as we all know, that it helped the Democrats to win the election. This is obviously not the case. But whether these policies were at least effective in decreasing their losses, implying that at least some voters might have reacted to these investments and refrained from moving into the Trump camp. So that's the question. Do they lose less? I think I explained this. So the basic idea is to then compare very similar counties, similarly badly developed, similarly struggling with structural change, that ideally differ in just this one aspect, that the one county receives funding and the other not. And then to see whether this investment makes any difference in the voting behavior of these counties. It's in principle a very nice empirical setup. I should say that I won't present regression results today because there's still no official, the data that's available is still preliminary. So they are still counting in the US. So more than 20% of the counties have less than 95% of the votes counted. And when working with the data, so the data I showed you is from last Tuesday, I realized that this is not yet reliable enough to really present reliable regression results. Nevertheless, I can give you a first impression, and this here just shows you, as said, the losses of the Democrats across all counties. So on average, in an average county, they lost something like 4.7% of their previous vote. That's not much different in counties where Bidenomics investments took place, and it's also not much different in counties that received a lot of funding. So overall, across the whole sample, as we have it right now, there's no indication that these investments undertaking under Bidenomics had any significant impact on the voting results. And I mean, I really don't know, because I think I lack relevant information, but I don't expect this to change with the additional data batches. So across the whole country, when all the counties are considered, it does not seem to be the case that these regional investments had any major impact. However, and I think with the considerations we talked about before, I consider this particularly interesting. There are indications that in certain subsets of counties, the investments might indeed have an effect. And I think from these differences, conditional on whether these are particularly poor counties, whether these are counties where housing prices increased a lot, I'm confident that one can learn something about how exactly voters react to such economic policies. We're just not there yet. But to give you an impression, and frankly speaking, it looked better, better before than here on the big screen. This is just for the battleground states, counties in the battleground states. And I hope you believe me that in the battleground states, the Democrats lost significantly less than on average reason. But here you do indeed have indications that losses were lower when investment took place, and specifically they are lower when there was a heavy investment. But it's indicative now. I really don't want to hang my hat onto it unless I have the full information, and I hope that they count a little bit faster and that in 1 or 2 weeks' time we will have additional results. So to wrap this up, this is what we have. So we can definitely say that Bidenomics did most obviously not help the Democrats to win this election, and also at the margin for the whole country there does not seem to be a strong effect. The question then is why? I mean, there's different reasons. Most investments just started early 2023, 2024, so they did not fully materialize. Perhaps people just did not realize, or the projects are just not active now. All I want to say is that I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this research, because I think it's relevant, because in the very end, and coming back to the question whether trouble and chaos is ahead, I think it's a very, very central mechanism of democratic systems that policymakers are rewarded for enacting welfare-increasing policies. So if there is no reward in terms of votes in the next election, there is no incentive to engage in such policies, and if this becomes the new standard, then we have a problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And I'd like to introduce Laura van Daniels here on the panel, who will give a short classification on the results, as well as Thomas Freke. Please come on the board. So maybe I think it's very, very good that you stressed the fact, okay, I really can't tell the story. These were the direct results of Bidenomics. We don't see that in the figures yet. So and maybe, Thomas, you can give a short, your opinion on that, why this study is so important for the paradigm and the change of it. And Laura van Daniels, I'm interested in your views on Robert's results. Thank you.
I will immediately hand over to you because I very much want to listen. I just wanted to say that, I mean, you heard of what Robert is saying, and I'm very grateful for him to have engaged in that exercise because, as you know, it's just 2 weeks ago that this election has happened, and Robert has worked day and night to collect most of the data he needed, and he didn't succeed because astonishingly, some counties are still counting their votes. I can't really.
Just a quick one. I don't think it's that astonishing because, I mean, it doesn't matter anymore, right? And on the ballot for the presidential election, on most ballots there were simultaneously elections for, what do I know, judges, councillors, and so on and so forth. And I think once the overall election was settled, they concentrate on this. And what is left now is primarily early and ballot votes where there are issues with signatures, and so they need extensive checking. And since it won't have any impact on the overall outcome, I think they just postponed this.
They didn't take account to what we wanted to know.
No.
Please.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's kind of hard to comment on a paper that I didn't read or the results that I didn't see, but as I gathered now, it is actually a non-finding, right? We have a dog that didn't bark, or we might as well say, since it's all preliminary, it's a dog that didn't bark yet. There might be a time lag, and effects might be visible later on. Maybe in a few years from now, people will appreciate Bidenomics, but they certainly didn't at this point. I think that's safe to say. And this tells us a few things. It tells us one thing about what I would call the excessive optimism of at least some economists and policy planners in the Biden administration, right? Thinking that you could plug in heavy industrial policy subsidies and then you get out an election result that is favorable. It didn't work, right? We know that. We could have known that looking at previous elections in other countries, including in this country, Germany, where some chancellors already had similar experiences in previous elections, not being rewarded for bold economic policy measures that they took. So voters didn't immediately reward politicians. It seems like, I think empirically, they are particularly hard on liberal or democratic or social democratic governments in elections. And they then often tend to vote for candidates who are more likely to take policy choices that are making those same people worse off. And the question is really why do voters take such decisions, right? And I think there are at least two alternative, or perhaps they add up, two explanations that I haven't seen on your list of explanations that I wanted to add, perhaps. And then you can do the hypothesis testing. But reason A, I think, is plain popular support for a populist, right-wing, misogynist, xenophobic, and racist candidate. So you can call that the cultural or ideological explanation. But it's really, I think, what drove people to vote for Trump. And it's not until I finished Robert Kagan's book, Rebellion, this summer that I really allowed myself to believe that that is the main motive for some people to vote for Trump, independent of all of the other factors that might have played a role. Then there's obviously at least one alternative explanation, which could be that voters in those counties that you were showing felt that it was not enough, that the IRA and the other two laws and what they did, the CHIPS law, the infrastructure law, was too little too late to help their communities. And just one last thought on that. In hindsight, I think if you look at the Democratic Party's policy and the way that those laws were rolled out, it might have been a mistake that the Build Back Better whole initiative, the policy strategy, was cut down to the IRA, and then some parts of the social, education, and family policy agenda were left out. And we all know this has lots to do with internal difficulties within the Democratic Party. You can also just say it's Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema who have been the main drivers of that. But anyways, maybe it would have been the right choice to keep those parts of the Build Back Better agenda, so people have a better sense of a policy that is helping them, and a policy signal, obviously, which they didn't receive when I look at what you presented.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this very thoughtful comments. So first of all, I would support this argument that it's not only the economy stupid, yeah, that here in the US election, but also in Europe, I mean, we learned over the last couple of years that not significantly larger than 0 share of the population is apparently racist, adheres to chauvinist ideas. Probably more than I expected in Germany, and this definitely played a role here. Of course, like always in these economic studies, you try to keep these influences constant and try to focus on the economic channel, but it's not only the economic channel, there were other important issues here at play as well. And regarding the signal, I think this is I mean, one aspect here is, and this is, we've been discussing this project for over a year now, and it also, our expectations changed most obviously with the roller coaster of US politics over the last year. But I mean, the hypothesis that these investments could have an impact on the elections are based on the literature, and specifically 2 strands of the literature. And the one is empirical papers that show that the initial success of Trump very much rests on his success in these structurally lagging regions, in these old manufacturing heartlands that suffered from globalization, the loss of manufacturing jobs. And one idea is that a policy that specifically addresses these regions and tries to develop the development perspectives for these regions should have the potential to revert this initial trend. And the other is that we see in Europe that similar policies here did have this effect, and it's very much a signal here in Europe. Apparently, just the very fact that government policies care for your lagging behind regions, that these liberal elites somewhere in Berlin or in DC suddenly care for your county, that this can have an effect, but apparently it did not in the US, and it is a non-result yet. Specifically for the whole country, I would not yet give up on finding some ideally meaningful affect heterogeneities in a sense that there are certain subsets of counties where people react. And if this is the case, I think it should help us to learn more about this transmission channel. But I really don't know what will come out. Stay tuned.
Okay, yeah, as Robert said, I mean, one thing that we always kept in mind is your findings on the EU, where you found some very robust results that in regions where EU structural funds have been investing heavily, the mean over 25 years, I think, the mean rate for extreme right votes is significantly less than in other regions. And then the whole literature that you mentioned is indicating on that, on the diagnosis very clearly that in the regions where there are heavy disruptions, socioeconomic disruptions, people tend to vote more for populist, and that's, I mean, Timo Fetzer for the UK, and there's some findings, evidence for Eastern Germany. That's why we stick for that. Maybe we have to reflect on the, you know, does the diagnosis mean that reversing it quickly brings back people? Because if people have lost their confidence into the system, usually that's very human. It takes much more time to find this. And maybe there was an interview with Michael Sandel yesterday, very interestingly, he pointed out to a larger set of things, also culture, also patriotism, but that are also always linked to this socioeconomic factors, and also always are linked to this loss of control idea. And that's, maybe we need to define it in a larger sense, not only in proper economic terms, but that people, when they feel that there is a loss of control over their lives or over of their politicians on policy making, that's what they heard, what's really made them suffering. And then it extends very much to cultural issues. Maybe last word, because we are a little over time.
Just wanted to say that I do not think that it is wrong what they did or what policy planning in the Biden administration did. I think it was a smart concept, IRA, and also using it in Republican-dominated areas to build consensus around the green transition and social policies. I probably go with the hypothesis that it was too little. It should have been more bold action, actually, to send a credible signal to voters. And that wasn't done, and I think it was a missed chance that they had.
Okay, I hand over back to Marlies or